Judy, you've been talking to individuals and couples for many, many years, and you probably, quote, have heard it all in terms of why not to do, they don't want to do a budget, why they don't stick to it. But I guess the question is, how were you able to make your book, The Budget Kit, how were you able to make it where it would encompass all of these things so that one book wouldn't have to be for one category of people or different age groups or whatever? I like it because it fits.
Well, I guess there was some part of me that just had the insight. I was young when I wrote that, because it's literally decades ago. And I saw such a need at that time, and it wasn't for any particular people, although it was. I was an admissions counselor at the college, and I saw people in different situations that needed help with their money. So they were all different situations, and it came up one section at a time. I realized people needed to track their spending, because we had done that from high school. My husband and I at the time had gotten little tracking books. And then the next part was, well, we were tracking, and suddenly something came up, like insurance, annual insurance.
Hadn't planned on
I
that.
hadn't planned on that. It's like, oh my God. Well, I need to work some. So I worked out a worksheet for that. And then it's like the last piece was how to put a budget together. How do you think through all the aspects of a budget? I kept working and working on it, and I came up with something. It just came in my head. I didn't get it from anywhere. and then I remember I was a counselor at the college, and the student came in. I was talking to him about it. He said, "That's it. That makes sense to me." And this was actually one of my Navajo students that was going to school there. So it just came to me, and now, I mean, literally, it's decades later. I look back and my God, I didn't realize how brilliant this was, because it keeps addressing all situations. It's actually a simple but powerful concept. I mean, money and budgets don't change over decades. We have different systems, different tools, but the core doesn't change.
And that's what you've really seen change is the internet and the apps that are available now. So really and truly, there's no excuse for any of
There's
us.
tons of information, tons of it.
And you suggest that people find a system that works for each of us.
For each of us.
And how do you suggest that do you just give them a list? Well, go home this week and try different ones?
There's so much information. All you have to do is plug something in on a search, and that's what people do. People just want to go in and search. Everybody, I don't care what age they are anymore. Now they're just searching. And so a lot of people land on track your spending. And if you read almost any article or any speaker, they'll say, you need to track your spending. Where's your money going? So track your expenses. That's how you start. And that's certainly a very valuable way to start. And that's what people have done for a long time before we even got into creating a budget. And I found that and people would tell me this, once they started tracking their spending, they said I was spending less, saving more, and my lifestyle didn't even change, which was kind of interesting. But more importantly, they started having insights. They paid attention to where am I spending my money, and they were more mindful. It's like, oh, that's interesting. So they weren't on autopilot, so they started learning about themselves and their attitudes and their behaviors. So that was very powerful. But the one thing I'd like to mention with tracking is people kind of get into the place where they think, I have a budget. But if you're tracking, that's not a budget. It's a tool, it's a system, but the only part of it. So don't think you're done by just tracking. So that's the first part of that. But to find one, to find a system, you could just go to your bank that you're using, your credit union that you're using. They have free tracking systems. Credit cards have free tracking systems. There's a lot of apps. There's a lot of software. Some are free, some you pay. But there's no lack of resources, surely.
So there's a lot of information out there, and there'll be something that applies or that maybe attracts each of us in a different way.
Everyone has a different style, so absolutely, you just have to try the different ones.
What do you mean about the setup alerts?
Well, now we're talking about modern times. We didn't have this before, and I love through our banks, or credit cards, I believe, we can set up alerts, like send a text alert to me, what my balance is in my account, or all my accounts every day, or let me know when I deposit, reminders of a deposit, or let me know when I spend over $50, or someone on the account is spending over $50. So you're staying current, you're staying mindful, you're staying very aware of where your finances are, which is very important to be aware of where are you at any time with your finances. The other part for people that is coming up more and more is that people are now becoming more mindful of their values and their family priorities. So as they look at their spending, they review their spending, they pay attention to it. It's like, well, is this really, this spending, is this in alignment with what we feel is important as far as our values, our priorities in our household? And it gets you to kind of interrupt that autopilot and to pay more attention.
And it varies from if they have small children,
Yes.
those teenager
Yes.
years, and then as well as older children.
Absolutely.
So I can see how our households change, and that would affect our budgets and tracking our spending.
And tracking the spending, because it always changes. The budgets change. And when people have children, it's very interesting, no matter what the age, because I have some clients, those children are in their 20s and 30s, and by golly, if there's still not money going out, or if the kids are at college, as we have in this environment perhaps, parents are still helping out. You know, maybe they're sending them X amount in their budgets. They send their kids $200-300 every month just to kind of help them out with extra cash, whatever it is. So there's always part of the budget, part of the tracking of, you know, the family all the time.
Have you had people say, wow, this was kind of hard to make me get started, but now that I can track where the spending's going, and it sort of opens up a new world, sort of liberating.
It's very liberating, and it's not deprivation like people often think in the beginning at all. People are actually kind of very, very satisfied knowing what's going on. And for some people, I found over the years, especially with the budget kit, it was like a security blanket for people. So I remember I get emails from people all over, and when there's a hurricanes going on over in Florida, someone said, it's in our hurricane box. We always take it with us, you know, all the time. And so then it's not just a one-year thing. Once people started, it's such a routine and such a habit. They do it year after year, even when they probably don't have to. But some people do stop because the routine is so much the same. And then there's an interruption, maybe a new baby, or someone's off to college, or your job changed, and then you're having to shift the budget again, get back in tune with it.
Has the purpose of the book changed through the decades?
Interestingly, people don't need the worksheets anymore that are in there. I mean, they're always available. People still love my worksheets, or the Excel worksheets online that they buy, or if they buy the book. But there's so many tools out there now that they can use with the concepts. And the concepts, again, are just that idea of how to create a budget, how to plan ahead for those yearly surprise expenses, and then the tracking. You can, that book, those concepts seem to be the core that continues to be valuable and the same. And when I talk about budgeting in general in there, and family meetings so that you work together as a couple, all of that is still consistent. Excuse me, I think it's just the tools now that have been changed
and the
over
source
time.
of the tools where they can get them. You mentioned a family meeting, or I thought that was an interesting point. Who runs it? How does it start?
And it's very important because you're trying to stay in touch with your money, because at one point we had talked about how our lives are so overwhelming and so busy. When do we stop to just focus on, well, what do we have coming up the next few weeks with everything in our life? Let's stop. And so people, ideally, if you can do at least once a week, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, just check in. You know, what's some upcoming expenses we need to be paying attention to? What about the trip we want to do this summer? How are we going to save more for that? What can we do? And these are all examples that I get from clients. And so I had this one couple, I mean, it gets contentious with couples. It's a real trigger point. And so this one couple, they call it their love chat. They make sure that they have their once a week love chat, that they sit down, they review everything, they review the plan, the balances on the credit cards, the payments they're making, what's going on with the kids, what's coming up, all of that. So it's a family meeting. And in some cases, it's good to have the children involved.
That's what I was thinking too. Sometimes they think the money just appears if they want to go to the store and buy new tennis shoes and have no idea what they cost. But what has to change in order for them to be able to have a new uniform for the school activities or whatever? I can see that as just being a really worthwhile meeting.
I think it's extremely valuable to involve the children. Like, let's say you want to put a pool in the backyard, you want to go to Disneyland, and you're wondering how to do it, and you kind of solicit from them, what do you guys think? And they may give you silly answers in the beginning, but they can be extremely creative, resourceful, and if they know that they're really being taken seriously, they're willing to cut back. So we don't need that now. Let's put money from this. they pitch in, and suddenly it's a whole new dynamic, and now they're part of the money picture, which is very valuable.
Well, I thought it was so interesting to read through it. I enjoyed it. I learned a lot just by reading it, and I haven't even started on the worksheets yet. But thank you very much for
You're
being
very
with us
welcome.
and for sharing the information about your budget kit.
Well, thank you so much, Sheryl.